Hey, how's it going everyone? My name is Allam, and a lot of you guys have been asking about how I set up my Fujifilm X100F. What are my settings whilst I'm shooting? So I'm here back in Tokyo. The reason I'm here in Japan is because I've actually been working with Discovery Channel on a documentary. That's now finished, and I did a vlog of that. That's going to be coming out in probably in a couple of months time or something. So you'll see behind the scenes when that gets released. If you subscribe to this channel, you get notified of that. So the settings for my Fujifilm. What do I use? Why do I use it? And some extra tips on how I go about it. So if you've been watching my channel for a while, you would have seen my recent Japan vlogs. They've been some of my favorite ones to make, and that has included a lot about the X100F. So if you haven't seen those, then I recommend going and checking out my channel and watching those. Honestly, they've been some of my favorite vlogs that I've ever made, so I hope you guys will enjoy them. Now, first and foremost, I think it should be mentioned that I shoot RAW with this camera rather than JPEG. Everyone always says about how great the JPEGs are in Fujifilm cameras. Yes, they are, but I also shoot RAW and I edit the photos. So the photos that you see in my previous videos and on my Instagram, they have all been edited. Weirdly, everyone always asks that when they know it's taken with the Fujifilm, but they never ask if it was taken with my Canon or something. So I just thought I'd mention, yes, the photos are edited, and yes, they are shot in RAW. I think the reason why everyone asks why they're edited or if they're edited is because the picture profiles on the Fujifilm are amazing. So let's just run you through those. So first and foremost, this is standard across pretty much all Fujifilm cameras, though I have heard that the X100F has a couple of extra black and white ones. I'm just going to show on the screen what the same image looks like, but it's unedited with those varying picture profiles applied to them, how it looks across all of them. So first and foremost, we have the Provia, which is the standard picture profile. Then we have Velvia, which is more of a vivid looking one. Astia, which kind of has some softened shadows and a more subdued look, as they've worded it here. Classic Chrome, this is my favorite of all of them. This is that classic Fujifilm look. Pro Negative High, Pro Negative Standard, and then we have the Acros, which is the black and white, and then we have Monochrome, which is a slightly different variation of the black and white. And there's also sepia in there, but I don't know why anyone would use sepia in their camera. Now when I'm out shooting street photography, I generally want to be as fast as possible and as discreet as possible. I know that's kind of hard if I'm making a vlog as well, because obviously this camera is a lot bigger, and I've got a second camera on me as well. So when I'm shooting street, I will put the camera around my neck, and this generally just stays quite nice and tidy like this, and I will shoot in Aperture Priority mode. Now for a wide variety of scenes, particularly in an urban city environment like this, I'll generally keep my aperture around 5.6 to f4, something in that range that allows me to get some close-up shots of things, but also some distance and maintain a good depth of field across things. If I want to separate my subject from the background, say there's someone going past on a bike, or there's just a nice foreground interest, I may even go as low as f2. Likewise, if I want to get a full scene in focus, I may go to something like f8 or higher, and that way you'll get everything nice and crisp and in focus. Now what's really nice about the Fujifilm is that all of the dials and controls for your shutter speed, your aperture, your exposure compensation, and your ISO, they are all on dials on the body itself. So unlike other cameras where you may have a manual, an aperture mode, a shutter mode, to set certain priorities, you just set some things and let others to auto. So for aperture priority, you set your aperture on the lens itself, and then you set your shutter speed to A mode, which is auto shutter. So it takes the aperture, works out the shutter speed for you. As for ISO, I leave that in auto mode, and we will come to that in a minute of what my auto modes are. Now on a bright sunny day such as today, one feature that I absolutely love about the X100F, and I didn't mention it in my review, is the built-in ND filter. So an ND filter is a neutral density filter, and it reduces the amount of light that comes into the lens and onto the sensor. That way, in bright daylight like today, we can use a much larger aperture, and it's actually going to not let as much light in, so therefore using the larger aperture we can make good use of that shallower depth of field at the same shutter speeds. So I've actually set mine to a custom button on the back with just the dial. If I just press that with my thumb, it's nice and handy, and it just toggles on and off. Now with the X100 you can set 3 different auto ISO modes. Now I use the different modes depending on the time of day and the available light. I generally shoot auto ISO about 80% of the time, I'd say. Now my first mode, auto ISO mode number 1, is setting a minimum shutter speed of 1/200th of a second and a maximum ISO of 1600. So what the camera will do is it will aim to always shoot at 1/200th of a second, and depending on what level of ambient light, it will raise the ISO, and depending on what aperture you're using as well, it will try and find the sweet spot that is the highest quality with the lowest amount of noise. Now my second mode is for what I call like that twilight zone, so kind of like from golden hour into blue hour. This is a minimum shutter speed of 1/125th of a second with a ISO up to 3200. Now again, this is perfectly usable on the Fujifilm X100F. I don't really get very much distracting noise in my images. And then the third auto ISO mode is down to 1/60th of a second as the minimum or desired shutter speed, and then the ISO goes up to 12,800, which is the highest that it goes on standard ISO modes before you go into those extended ranges up to 51,200 and so on. Now again, I use this very minimally. This is at the sort of the last sort of available light in the day or night shots. Sometimes when it gets really dark, I will switch to manual ISO, just to keep control on things, because sometimes when it gets really dark, it goes for the highest ISO, sometimes unnecessarily, you know, depending on what it's metering in the image. Now a lot of people in the comments on previous videos have also mentioned about the noise on Fujifilm cameras, particularly when it goes into Lightroom, saying it comes out kind of a bit creamy and a bit pastel-y and a bit weird. So from some advice from people in the comments, some information I want to share on to you: if you do have a Fujifilm camera with some undesirable artifacts, set your noise reduction to -2 or -4 in camera, even if you're shooting RAW, and then when you process them in Lightroom or whatever software, you may have nicer images, because what actually happens is the camera is trying to do some noise reduction, and in turn it sometimes kind of blurs colors together and is a little bit messy. I personally haven't had too much of an issue with that at all. Likewise, using Lightroom, I've actually had great results, but some people have recommended some other software. I think one's called Iridient X Transformer, something along those lines. So go and check those out if you're interested. Now as for the custom settings on the X100F, that pretty much covers everything, and that is my shooting setup. There is, however, one thing that I'm currently experimenting with, and that is the shadow tone of the images. So Fujifilm generally create beautifully contrasty images, but sometimes I find myself editing out those really dark blacks and shadows in an image. So I've been testing around, and I've currently set my camera to shadows at +2, and I've yet to like edit a wide variety of things yet, but so far I think that's been good as a way of creating like a good base for my images. If I want those darker blacks, I can edit them in Lightroom, otherwise I'm not editing against that. So that's just one thing that I've kind of been experimenting with recently. Other than that, I have one major tip that I want to share with you guys, and that is when you have your camera, if you want to set up custom buttons, just hold down one of the buttons on the back. So I'm going to hold the display, and it pulls up the window to customize all of the other buttons, and from here you can change everything and you can set it customized to how you like. You can have that tip for free. Now as for autofocus with this camera, I generally shoot in AF single shot mode. So the switch on the side, if you just set it to the bottom onto the S mode, the other options are continuous or manual focus. But I leave my camera in single shot mode, and then in your settings I've set up the manual override, which allows you to half press the shutter and then change your focus manually if you want to do a manual correction to your image. But generally single shot is great for me, and I use the single zone on a larger size, and I just pinpoint it around using that little joystick on the back. That's extremely useful, incredibly helpful. I've since had to play around with some of the older X100s, and without having that joystick, it's a deal breaker. I think if you're looking between the two cameras, the F is totally worth it for the extra money as well, and the quality. As I've mentioned in all my other videos, I love this camera so much, and I think you guys will too. By the way, just a quick word on the viewfinder. So if you know about this camera has a optical and electronic viewfinder in one as a hybrid. Just with a little switch on the front, you can change it between different modes. I actually shoot mostly in electronic viewfinder mode. I very rarely use the optical mode. It's there if I need it, but generally I enjoy the electrical mode on this quite considerably. And I just leave it on the eye sensor mode so that if I want to go between screen and viewfinder, it does it automatically. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a massive thumbs up with the like button below. Leave a comment down below if you have any of your own settings or tips or if you appreciated any of these particular tips in this video. And if you are new to my channel, then definitely subscribe. You'll catch all my future videos. I've got a few more planned for Tokyo whilst I'm here, plenty more with the Fujifilm, and other photography and travel stuff. So I look forward to seeing you around soon. One final plug whilst we're on the end screen. Go and check out my Instagram. I've been posting loads of photos, and you guys seem to be really loving those with the Fujifilm and other cameras as well. In fact, I'm actually just heading off now. I might buy a new lens for my Canon. Shh, don't tell Ellie. Thanks for watching. See you later. Bye bye.